Arbab-e-Qalam was originally founded by a renowned Urdu poet Shabnam Rumani in 1960s in Karachi, Pakistan. Through this program, we aim to build bridges between these languages and their writers, fostering a connection that transcends words and cultural boundaries. We are honored to have a distinguished guest speaker with us today, Mr. Pétrek Meade. Pétrek is a celebrated poet and an advocate for the power of words, originally from Corner Books, Newfoundland, and now residing in Whitby. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me welcoming our esteemed guest, Mr. Pétrek Meade. We have a lot of books, and you can buy those books. It's $10 per book, and all those monies goes to that charity.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Janaib, and thank you everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Hello. Good afternoon. So we are going to do something destructive and something constructive. We will try to break some walls and build some bridges. All right. So the plan, and again, we're not here for a very philosophical discussion. What all we want is to have a frank discussion between the people who are writing. Maybe the same thing sometimes in different languages, and we don't have the opportunity to talk to each other as much as we should. First of all, I want to read a couplet from my father, Shabnam Rumani, first in Urdu, and then I will translate it. So it says, "हर एक ज़बान दरीचा है खाने जहाँ का, so मुझको प्यार है दुनिया की सब ज़बानों से." Which means language is a window to the soul. So I love all the languages of the world. When I read the first couplet, which we call Shair, you heard wow, 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 right? You don't hear that in your 40 nights. So that is one difference. So instead of clapping, sometimes we also clap. We used to avoid clapping in the past. Now clapping is also part of our Urdu 40 events. But normally we say when we hear something and we like it, we say wow. Okay, like wow. So there was a research scholar, a very big name in Urdu literature. His name was Azeem. And he said, everyone who gets pleasure from writing poetry has the right to do so, and regardless of its quality, doesn't matter how good or bad it is, but no one has the right to stop him or her from doing that, right? And that's what I see when I see you, the last time when you brought those some people up and asked them to read it. So why not you start with telling us what your thoughts are, some of your thoughts about poetry in shaping the person or society or the cultural identity.
First of all, thank you very much. I'm not sure how to do that in Urdu. It's really, I am honored, I am touched, I am taken, and I think this is beautiful, that we can get together and share thoughts, kindness. I met Faisal a while back, and we chatted and we hugged. And Mehman, his son back there. And we, whether I be from Newfoundland or Canada or from Karachi or Zimbabwe or Yugoslavia, we are all in this together. We are. We're all one. So as far as poetry goes, poetry is stillness, poetry is truth, poetry is tears, poetry is real. Many people, ladies and gentlemen, have been thrown in jail for speaking their poems, telling the truth, all over the world. Here, I'm sitting with a bottle of water and a book and paper and pen and this and all of you and food. Many people and many places cannot do that. So for poetry, poetry is honesty. Poetry is climbing out of a hole and say, this is where I need to be, this is where I want to be. And we write poetry maybe to get healed, maybe to honor what we are here on earth, and maybe sometimes smile and laugh. It's really important to get humor, laughter, if you can, or lightheartedness. I loved when you people were applauding or commenting or laughing. That's magical. the spirit needs that in the sense of poetry, right? So I will take that away with me. I made notes here. It's so nice to see people smile over your couplets. That's beautiful. And lots of us are locked down. Family, once again, culture, society, and so on. Poetry is just coming out and saying, this is how I feel. Because if we worry about what other people are going to think, we'll never put it down. Whatever a poet is just is honesty, is openness, and sharing goodness as much as we have to support each other. That's why I said, whether you're from Zimbabwe or Yugoslavia, Karachi, and so on, we're all in this together. And poetry, which has been around for thousands of years, it's probably been around for thousands of years because we know it works. We know that's our savior in a way, how we have different saviors, but that's one of our, that's our voice, that's our heart, that's our blood. So, thank you.
Thank you. So, in Urdu, we have so many different forms of poetry. Some of the more popular ones I will just mention. One is ghazal, like we talked about that before, which is the most popular, is still most popular, although sometimes it becomes controversial for some friends. But ghazal, and then we have poem, which could be free verse, it could be blank verse, it's prose poem, also regular, or we call it paband. Among all those, and then there are many others. And then haiku is also one of the popular ones. Like you write haikus, right?
Haikus.
Haikus. So I know you like those. And we have Sikandar Bakar in the back, one of our members, and he likes writing haikus too. So, and there are many others, traditional ones. Can you talk about some of the popular genres in English, contemporary English poetry?
I will try, but I'm human like anybody else, and I can only give my point of view on. If you look around and you see a tree with a leaf falling, well, that's a poem. Or is a worm under the tree surviving, looking for moisture, whatever. Those are poems. So where I'm going with this is nature has so many gifts. She's always there. She's our oxygen, literally, and she's there to guide us, to listen to us, to cry with us. So on that side of things, nature is always, whether you're writing Shakespeare or way back, or John Donne, or whomever, Keats and such, nature is there. So that's the main one we can draw from, that I can think of. Metal and chains and fishing gear to go around our earth 3 times. What are we doing to ourselves? And climate change is real. So I try to write from that perspective, and other poets do too, try to write from the perspective of Mother Nature knocking on our door. We burnt hers down. But if we don't listen to Mother Earth, why are we reading the books, right? We need, whether we, like, I think it was 1969, was it? You started over in Karachi?
67.
67. And the pleas and the poetry and all that came out of there. I read some of the material here that was translated into English from Urdu, and so this has been going on a long, long time. Rumi speaks of it, you know. So in the sense of what can we write contemporarily and so on, she's the main one to speak on. Everything else is secondary. If you speak about AI or cars or the latest fad, or
so talking about different forms, would you name a few of more popular forms that are being written in English right now? Like haiku, for example, is one of them, right? So others.
Yeah, haiku is one, and that's short. You know, you got, I think 3 lines. I think it's 575.
575.
Yeah, and whatever you want to tell your story, and that's there. You can do rhyming, you can do free verse. I used to write rhyme, and then somehow I got brave, and I tried writing free verse, and a whole new world come up. And we have to give permission to ourselves to try different things. So those are just a couple. I don't vary too much into different. Those are my main ones. Some haiku.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so now thinking about the audience that you get, and thinking about the different poets that you see or hear or listen to or read. In Urdu, the rhythmic poetry is much more popular, so even more than the free verse and much more than the prose poetry. When it has more rhyming, people like it more because of the musical effect of it. Do you have the same thing in English word as well?
For me, once again, I think I'm extremely fortunate, right? So I can't play guitar or the sitar or the piano or sing. But in the sense of my brain likes rhythm, rhyme for poetry, and it goes like this, da 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 da. Whether it be 2 syllables, 3, 5 syllables, and so on, like you have in yours, right? You love the rhyme. We can benefit from that. We learn from that. That's why it's important to share everybody together and pass on your ideas from Karachi, Pakistan, India, and so on over here, and we mesh. I think we don't have that interaction. Some people will respond. But the rhyme and the rhythm, I stay with it. It's beautiful, it's traditional as can be. And we do it over here, but here in North America, I think maybe even England, Europe, they've broken away and tried some free verse. But the rhyme creates a goodness in your head. Do-do-do-do-do-do. I don't know how it works, but we have control of that. So rhyming, I'm a big fan of rhyming.
The study of the meters and on the art of poetry, we call it aruz. Okay, which is from Farsi. So we call it aruz, and it is similar to prosody or versification. In English, we have a meter based on the fluctuation of words, the sounds. Okay, and in English, of course, you have rhythm in a different way. I think based on the stress, how you stress on syllables, etc. Would you like to explain a bit for us to understand, if you want to?
I think, once again, it also takes practice. I started writing about 20 years ago. Thing is, just try it, whatever it be. Then the syllables, the rhyming, the dance, it's in here. We got to go, come on out. And I think that's what happens there. If you can just go into your mind or give permission to try. I've talked to people, many people, and they say, I can't write. I said, well, put your pen to paper and try. And the brain is waiting, the imagination is ready, and it'll come up with the dance, the rhythm, the different syllables, and so on. So it's a matter of practice, trying, giving permission to yourself, oh, I can do that. Like when we look around and say, oh my God, he's a very, very good writer, she's a very, very good poet, and we put ourselves down. And we never ever went into our imagination, which is so beautiful. I hope I'm trying to answer your question, but I know I may stray off a bit, but I want to go back to how important the imagination is. And wherever if you want to write haikus, you want to write double syllables, triple, 16 syllables, if you can find such a word, do it. But it's about trying things, right?
More about whatever you're thinking, just write it down. That's what you're saying, right?
I would definitely, right, because we do it just to present rhythm or rhyme, and how many syllables did I get in there, or did I get 16 lines or 24, then you're not being honest to yourself. Bring out, that's how I look at it.
What it is the poetry, whether it's a prose or poetry or something like that, this is basically a tool. Your experiences, your thoughts, your imagination and everything you are writing, on a piece of paper or something like that. And comparing prose and the poem, like with the rhyming words and everything, and the Jabir once told that in English poet, there is no radif.
So, please.
Thank you for being here. I just want to mention,
So Munir Sami is running Artist Forum and Progressive Writers. I'm sorry.
so just to connect on the formal discussion that he's talking about what forms and what genres, most of the English poetry, as I understand, and John Hollander, who wrote the book Rhymes Reason, has explained, is revolves on what we call iambic pentameter or iambic pentameter, and then you go to free words and stuff like that. Similarly, in Urdu, we have several meters, like 16 meters on which people write. They took it from Arabic and Persian, and all of them very complex meters. And those meters are such that even in the ghazal genre, multiple such meters are used. So it's a very complicated system of poetry, the language that we call Urdu, that comes from Farsi and Arabic in terms of poetry. So John Hollander himself, this for general public who want to understand what these genres are in English and the meter of English, I would strongly suggest a book called Rhymes Reason. It's only $15 book. I've been distributing it to the people. If you go through that, you will understand all of the form that is normally used in the English or the Western poetry. But interestingly, John Hollander mentions ghazals, and he talks about ghazals meters into that book. So this is already there in what you call the collateral of poetry and forms. So we should keep that in mind in terms of exchange of ideas so that the forms can be more easily understood. But what it is said, the iambic pentameter is a very simple form of English in which many people can do what you call the short and long, short and long, short and long, mix them up. But when it comes to Urdu poetry, it becomes very complicated. So only the very special people on this can write in those forms that are there. There are lots of them, and major works have been done. So I just wanted to mention that if you're talking forms, as a comparison, we should keep that in mind.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. She is a senior poet and very good poet.
And my main themes are also equality. So, adding to Munir's, I just want to say that in Urdu poetry, even the free verse has a meter. It is a dance of meter inside, and you can catch it. And we don't write free poetry like totally free from rhythm. It's not like that. We are very, very rhythmic.
Probably read this in Urdu for me, okay?
Oh, okay.
Read this in Urdu, and I'll try to respond in English. So not this one down 5, is it?
Number 5. So it's a form Zehra Nigah. एक एक जख्म है हर जाएगा क्या खबर थी कि रगे जामे उतर जाएगा. And the translation.
Okay, so right here. Translation. I thought it was a wound that would heal. Who knew it would seep into the very veins of my soul? Yeah. So when you ask comparison or what do I think, we think of Urdu language poetry. Shakespeare in Macbeth, Lady Macbeth had said, all the waters, I'm just going to paraphrase, I don't have the exact words, said all the waters in the world will not wash away this blood. And so, when it said, who knew would seep deep into the very veins of my soul, even though I thought it was a wound that would heal. And so, in comparison, then, we have this universal, as the lady was just saying there, we have this universal connection, awareness. We all have pain or guilt or things we carry with us we cannot get rid of. Like you were saying, you're connected to the universe and the humanity. And so that's what Shakespeare wrote about, right? So in Urdu, as you just read, we all, whether it be 2,000 years ago, 100 years ago, 15 years ago, 1967 over in Karachi, connected. And so the same thoughts are via Urdu or via Shakespeare or via Karachi. We're all in this together. We all have the same feelings. You may express it in Urdu in a certain way, and with the many syllables and such that you use over there, and you're very tight and very rigid in how you say it, very specialized. But in here, as you just said a few minutes ago, it comes, we're hooked to the heart. Yep. And so that's humanity. That's the humanity that you spoke of. So what do I think of Urdu? I loved reading the translations. There's another one here. You can read it, please. That one there.
जो नए रास्ते ढूंढती है मैं वो रोशनी हूँ जो अंधेरों से जंग करती है मैं ख्याल I think it's a prose 2 lines of a prose poem.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, and the translation of that is, I am the thought that seeks new paths. I am the light that battles the darkness. So, once again, we have that. If we didn't have the light that battles the darkness, and we do have it, we do need it, right? We just spoke about Mother Earth a few minutes ago. That's what's going on.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. One is a minor correction. The first verse ہم تو سمجھے تھے کہ زخم دس ناٹ زیادہ لگا ہے, اس پر بھی انشاء کریں.
Okay, so wrong with clear.
Secondly, I have been hearing so much of emphasis on the feeling and the heart, and to what degree a creative artist could be influenced by the intellectual ideas, or a poet or a writer and an artist should be impervious to the intellectual ideas. To what degree? Actually, in the back of my mind is a very, very old Dionysian and Apollo of our Greek mythology, and always a great piece of art has a good combination of both of them. And over here I've been hearing more so of the heart and the feeling only, and was just wondering, is it enough to create great art?
Personally, we're all individuals. I grew up in a family of 12. And I was influenced by a brook, and actually was by nature, by whales, by spiders, by friends, by sick friends in wheelchairs. Some young kids died, heart problems, 9, 10 years old, leukemia, wheelchair bound and all. That affected me as a person towards humanity that came up much later in my poetry. So some people may not be affected philosophically, right? But pain-wise they will. And if that's where their poem is, then that's all they need to be, and where they could be. Others who might read many different books or study in different languages and such, and venture off into other realms, if you will, then that's where they're going to, we're not all at the same level. We're all different. And so some people love, I work with a guy, a president of a society for poetry, and he would not let anybody read free verse. He said the only poems, anything, is just rhyme. And so he was also, how do you say, he had his own views. So we all have our own views. I left that group because of his views, okay? And I'm being honest, But, so I read lots of poetry and say, I'm sorry, I don't understand a lot. So I do not understand where she is coming from, because I'm not on her spiritual level, her philosophical level, wherever that be. But emotionally, I can get attached.
Okay, my name is Sumaira. I go by, my pen name is Samra, and I'm not a very deep writer or anything. But just a question that most of us sitting in this room are mostly like middle-aged, mature people, except the ladies, they're all under 30. So my question is, in our lifetime, we have seen so much transition in the literature world. Like when I was growing up, I like we used to read books, right? Then it turned to like audio visuals. Then now it turned to like audiobooks and artificial intelligence. So the question I want to ask is, you guys talked a lot about emotions and philosophy or whatever, right? But nowadays, this artificial intelligence, you can put the keywords and it can generate whatever you want, right? So what do you see? Like, do you see it as a threat or a challenge to the actual human touch or human emotions when you compare to the poems or literature generated by this AI? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, my dear. Last week I was with a group just outside Oshawa, a poetry group. There were 6 of us. One gentleman was invited by a friend, and he said, I don't write poetry. He said, but can I try one on AI? I've not done personally on AI any poetry. And I said, sure, go ahead. And the theme was about ghosts and trees. In about 20 seconds, he had a poem. You all know how hard it is to write one line, or just to get started, or a title. And it came out like, you know, had he not told us it was AI, how am I to know that? Some of it is very, very good. There's a gentleman, you all who showed up, all of you came, I think from Toronto, Mississauga way and all. thank you for being here.
Even Buffalo.
And Buffalo. Cool. Wonderful. Don't lose your heart. Don't lose your poetry, my dear. Thank you for but it's an evolution. And something says, listen, you better protect us. Whether it be poetry, dance, song, give someone a hug. If you depend on AI to give you your hug, not good. Not good. So no, it's a lot of pain because your pain got to come out. No pain came out of AI.
Yeah.
No,
Actually,
I'm Lisa Reynolds, and I'm the branch manager for the Ontario Poetry Society. I'm very happy to be here and to support Patrick as well. So we have talked about the issue of AI quite a bit, and it is very controversial in terms of who is the author of what is created. In the end, that is the end question. Who is writing the poem? And if you have a computer-generated program writing the poem for you, you are not the author of that poem. And that's something to think about. Sometimes you can have something that gives you help, gives you an idea, maybe using it for a prompt. But when you look at the poetry itself, does it really have what is necessary to be a good poem? Or is it plagiarizing someone else's poetry? You can put in a poem and say, or put in a couple words and say, give me a poem that sounds like Mary Oliver. And then something will be spewed out for you. Is that your poem? No, that's not your poem. So when we give up our own sense of intelligence to a program to write something for us, then where does it end?
Dr. Faisal is a psychiatrist and a very good writer, and also he writes in English and Urdu both, and a poet.
So good to remind Newfoundland.
Sorry, so you talk about heart a lot, right? That's why Dr. Faisal runs an organization called Family of the Heart.
Of course.
I think the question for you, before the question, that the thing that struck me coming from Pakistan to Canada, to North America, that in Pakistan, one person is a poet, the second person composes music, the third person sings. So there are three different people in that. But when I came to North America, I realized that the same person can compose a song, the same person can compose music, and the same person can sing. So all three identities in North America can be in one. But I want to ask you, the songwriters, how do you see songwriters different than poets? Because many people just write poetry, while others sort of compose songs and music and all that. Do you think the songwriters are as well respected as the poets or not? That's my thought.
So I went to a book celebration, a book launch out in Oshawa University out there, UOIT, and roughly 150 booksellers. There was one person selling poetry. One, okay? So when we have open mics, we get minimal attention or numbers coming out. Songwriters, because they can go to music, a guitar, piano, and voice in that sense, there's a lot more attraction there. Maybe it's literally the music of it that makes us dance, make us move, make us feel good. You can obviously get that in poetry, but songwriters, I mean, like John Lennon, McCartney, and all them, they were Leonard Cohen. They're songwriters and poets, right? They blend together. So maybe it's a fine line on that, who the poet is and what their songwriter is. That's how some blend over. I've been approached by people, musicians, and asked me to write them music, poetry, if you will. So it's a tricky line, but it's interesting that you say three of them is broken down individually back home. Here, yeah, they do their own thing, but that's just about to feed the human spirit, whatever one wants to do. We shouldn't have shackles on us or boxes and say you can't go beyond that. Be who you want to be. And if you're, I don't write music. I've written one song, "The Cove," and for me, it's fascinating what's in here to come out as a songwriter. Then the music is alive in you. For some people, it may be no difference, or some people say a songwriter and a poet are completely different. Rhyme, that's music, da, 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 that's a songwriter, but it's the songwriter in a poet's mind. We all have it.
Even in Pakistan or even in India, other places, there are people who are doing this thing, that they are writing their own song and but it's not. If you look at it, it's not as good in terms of creativity like a piece of literature. But yeah, so like that.
Khalis will raise a very important question I wanted to touch upon. It's very, very important because if you people remember the name Bob Dylan, Bob Dylan was given the Nobel Prize of Poetry. He was a songwriter, one of the greatest songwriters of our times. So, and they said that we have awarding him for his poetic expression. So a songwriter could be a great poet, and this is no buyer, and the other person who is a Canadian poet is Leonard Cohen. So the debate was whether Cohen should receive the prize or Bob Dylan should. Both of them great poets. I mean, they happen to sing their song themselves, and the great songs. So there's no difference between a songwriter or a poet. They are the same people.
I think what singer-songwriter do is beautify and enhance the music and its beauty, poem's beauty to a higher level, because the sound effect, but it brings out that poetry. It is not only independently doing some rhythms and everything. So actually singer-songwriter is a poet who enhances the beauty and rhythm of the poetry.
So in future what I see that AI will be a tool, right? And you still have to give prompts to them. So still you can write your own stuff, but we may be using tools to do that, okay? And one thing about AI and our new like Google translation, you remember we had this discussion on Facebook on that one, that languages are getting closer to each other, right? Because I read software journals also, in which I actually read that, okay, we have three different ways to write Urdu, what you call it, Roman Urdu or classical Urdu writing and Devanagari. Whether we like it or not, we are going to that direction. So just try to use that, okay, and try to acknowledge that, okay.
Urdu, the most popular form, like I said before, is ghazal, and Marisa mentioned about John Hollander. So ghazal has been written in Urdu with certain, and ghazal has some limitations, but you'll be surprised that with so many restrictions, so many limitations, ghazal is the most popular form of poetry in Urdu, even in these days. And one reason could be because, and it's also, by the way, people have even written English ghazal with all those restrictions, limitations, and John Hollander is one of those examples. And then there are people who said, okay, we will write ghazal, but we don't accept all these shackles. So they even wrote anti-ghazal in Urdu as well as in English. And so the rules are, one thing is, ghazal is made of some units. Each unit is a couplet of 2 lines. Okay. And this could be why, maybe one reason why in these days of TikTok, ghazal is still popular, because every couplet, which is called share, Shabe Share, right? So Shabe Share actually means poetry night. So in which share is a couplet or poetry. So in ghazal you have units. Every unit is a couplet of 2 lines, and every share or every couplet is complete in its own self. And due to that, it travels very easily. It travels, across boundaries, and it becomes a proverb most of the time. We use couplets and share when we want to talk. Like I started with when in the very beginning, I read a share, a couplet, right? Arbab-e-Qalam daricha hai khane hai jaan ka. So that may be one reason. The limitations are, number one, it has to be in form of couplets. In every couplet, it has to have certain meter, and same meter has to be followed throughout the ghazal. And you have a refrain and you have a rhyme in that. So in the first couplet, you have both. Sometimes you do, you have refrain in ghazal, sometimes you don't, but rhyme is always there. Every couplet ends with a rhyming word. Okay. So I'm thanks to Munir Sahib, he gave me that reference. So and every couplet could be on a separate topic as well. So John Hollander, he wrote a ghazal on ghazal. For couplets, the ghazal is prime at the end. Of each one's a refrain like a chime at the end. But in subsequent couplets throughout the whole poem, it's the second line only will rhyme at the end. All manner of flowers all day, but your hands were most fragrant of thyme at the end. So it's a long ghazal, but I have just read 3 of them. So this is really tells actually what it is. Okay. So thinking about that, what do you think about this concept of this rhythm, this rhyme and refrain of Urdu ghazal? How do you think it might it could resonate with English poetry? It does with English poetry tradition, or how it might resonate today?
As best as we're all individual in how we write, what our upbringings, our education, our emotions, especially emotions. So, and I struggled writing, as I said earlier, writing a paragraph to a story, and something inside me said, write poetry. I was brought up that poetry was rhyming, so I wrote poetry as best as I could 20 years ago in rhyme. And then I realized, oh, you can also use syllables and alliteration to do the dance. And as you said, like you can, when you do your couplet, you can even have a different energy or a different meaning, a different thought going on as you change throughout. If we get a book only with 60 pages, every book in the world was 60 pages, and someone came up and said, I want to do 61. That's breaking from the routine, the pattern, the system. I actually think that's okay, because we can only do so much in 60 pages. And what I'm trying to say here, like when we do rhyme or your couplets and verse and all, sometimes, for me, sometimes rhyming might lock me down. That's not what I wanted to say. I need to say something else with other words, meaning go beyond page 60 or get out of that. But if that's your tradition and pattern and set up in 1960 or even 67, but way back, then that's important too, not to break the tradition. But you also got to be honest in here, opening up your heart. And if a rhyme won't open my heart, then I'll go to something else. And that's because you have to answer your own way. So so as far as rhyming or couplets and staying that was consistent, beautiful, my spirit needed who else? Because we're all different spirits. So I think you got to answer to that too.
I heard about your poem, My Daughter and I, or My Daughter and Her Father, something like to that effect. And I think
Father and daughter.
Father and daughter. I think it is that kind of feeling which have nothing to do with AI that brings the poet in you. I would very much like you to recite that, and then we will be able to feel how close poetry is in any language. Listening to you about love of nature and all that almost reminded me to quote a verse from Ghalib, who is one of the greatest poet of any language. And I'll say it in Urdu, then I'll translate it for you. And he said, Dekhna taqreer ki lazzat ke jo usne kaha, maine ye jana ke goya ye bhi mere dil mein hai. Just look at the delightful words that she speaks. And Ghalib always contradicts and draws attention to this contradiction: speech and feeling, words and delightfulness. And the delight was that I thought as if what she said was my heart's own voice. That's what poetry means in terms it relates you to me and to everybody else. It relates you to nature. AI is a great tool, I totally agree with you. It's a great tool to improve your draft or things like that. But if you try to be dishonest and in 20 seconds you tell AI that write a poem because I'm going to an event where Patrick Meade will be there, and it writes that, it is dishonesty. And again, comparison in two languages, the same thing when it comes from Shakespeare. This above all, to thine own self be true. And then it follows, as the day, the night, thou canst not be false to any man. You lose that honesty when you put your name to something that AI has created.
So I think in the end I will request Patrick to read it. And Shahta Sahab he is also a negotiator. He is a conflict resolution. He works on conflict resolutions, and he has done so very great translations as well. Now, if there is anything.
When we were growing up back in Pakistan, even children have a lot of interest in poetry. They have remembered many couplets of different poets, and they were reciting in schools and all that, and they have a good understanding of poetry. And with time, that was diminishing. I can see that it has gone from verse to very verse to whatever. Do you see the same thing in Canada or in Western world, that new generation is going away from love of poetry or away from that kind of experience of life that make them better in life, but through poetry?
I will say, thank you. When I met with Faisal, and Faisal had come with his son Mehman out to participate and be part of our group, how much energy and aliveness there is in Pakistan, India, with Karachi, Lahore, and so on. You have, it seems, a lot of good groups from 1967 and beyond that kept poetry alive. I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago about being to this book fair, 150 people, booksellers, one was poet. One. We don't get too many people, like we only have a couple of young people here today, young being probably under 30. And that's just the way the world is. But whoever has the heart or the calling or within us to go do, we all have feelings, but we put them on paper and it becomes a poem and it becomes a tear and all. So the young people out there, we've offered many different ways. We've had young people come up, 16, 17, 18, and so on. But I think poetry may, if you will, the opening of the heart, might come a little later. They're all possibly poets within. I didn't write till 20 years ago.
Good thing about a singer to compose or write poetry is that the bahar that they measure. They don't need that kind of. It's very simple for them because they deal with the rhythm, which is a cycle of 16 and 14 and 17 beats and everything.
My name is Nusra Siddiq. Coming back to genre, because we were talking about that. I think the idea and the thought or the topic chooses the genre. That's why there's a question why in every poetry history there are so many genres. Why? Because in every genre you can go to a certain limit with your topic. For example, if I want to say some long, which need a long verse, I can't say it in a ghazal because ghazal is short and every two couplets have its own meaning, its own topic. So I have to go out of that. But
your poem, like your piece talk about some interaction between the English and Urdu world. So we are like there are two parallel universes at the same place, and we see each other, but we cannot hear each other. We know we are doing something. We can see the lips moving, but we don't know what they are saying. It's like one of my father's misa, number line of a couplet. Tere mere beech ho jaise shishe ki diwar, as if there is a glass wall between us. So when the people who write in Urdu here in Canada, we have a dilemma. One thing is that we are cut off from the local mainstream literature circles, and that's because of the language difference. and because we have most of us were brought up with writing in Urdu. And the other thing is we are also not very well connected sometimes. We are really a step behind from the actual Urdu world in the Urdu-speaking countries. So we are in that. So we want to, of course, we want to be part of the mainstream as well. Any advice you want to give to the Urdu Canadian writers and poets, how to bridge that gap between mainstream?
I work together, right? So whether it be Urdu or Czechoslovakian or here in Canada, have more meetings, have more open, like I am fascinated with this today, fascinated. And this is just part of it then, having group sessions like this, be open in different languages, and go to open mics, or translate material from Urdu to English and vice versa. And like some of it is lost. You're saying about your daughter, right? Some of it is lost with the French, English, and Urdu and all. But continuing to do this, just have meetings, just go online and see what is being offered out there, translation, if you will. But having your own language discussions, because you don't want to lose that, is important too, right? And hopefully, I actually do not know any Urdu, right? Now, I had to come up here, by the way, when I was in Newfoundland, they have their own language. I had to come up here and learn my own English, right? Trust me. Like, we got different words all together back home, and the accent, and the dialect. So, but I admire that you're doing this and brought it to this level of promoting your own, your poetry, and not letting it go by the wayside. Don't ever lose that. Don't ever lose your poetry. And this is a way of branching out, bringing everybody in, and like I was fortunate enough to read some of the translations, and that's very powerful. So I say continue doing these and having open meetings and open mics and such.
Yeah, and how can we increase more cross-pollination through translations between Urdu and maybe, I mean, we have very good writers, for example, Shair Faisal, Dr. Saab, Khalid Suhail, and I don't know, maybe Munir Saab, whether you have done any translation, maybe Dr. Saab or Tariq Fazil, Mirza Sahiba. There might be some translation that you have done, and so if anyone else I'm missing, sorry. So we have people who are doing translations from, can we increase that and more in both directions? Can we do something to do to increase that?
Lisa's here, she's from the Ontario Poetry Society. She's the manager for this area here. And I guess if you want to join with the Ontario Poetry Society, it might be one option. Once again, just being out there, reading your and translating, especially because we who do not understand Urdu, can get the energy of that or the effect, or be inspired for it and get ideas to write down and say, yes, I can use that interpretation of that idea. I think just
you have to ask yourself, what am I doing this for? Is it just to get my name out there? Is it just to get my poetry read? And how much are you willing to give up in terms of your poetry, in terms of what you're writing is important to you? Because that's key. And Patrick, I mean, he is true to himself. When he's writing, his heart is on his sleeve, and he does so well, touches so many people with what he's writing. So there are different ways in terms of the content, as you were speaking of. The content depends on where you submit to. If you have something that is politically driven or peace-oriented, let's just say, then you would submit to magazines that have something like that in terms of their specific theme, and that will be a benefit, and you'll reach the right audience, because not everybody wants to read that. So you have to think of the audience who is going to be reading your poetry, and that way it just saves you some time and some, so you're not feeling so rejected when your poems aren't accepted. Because sometimes when
I just want to make sure the reality, if we are listening as if nothing is happening in building bridges in Canada on the Pakistani front. So I went through the history of the Ontario Poetry Society. I was sad to see that in none of your events, or maybe very little of your events, the writers from the other communities, the other, like the South Asian others were invited. Vice versa, M.G. Vasanji, who is one of the most well-known writers in Canada, Order of Canada recipient, when he held his literary festival, Nusrat was there, many others were there. So we will do sessions of people of multiple languages, good people, very English section of they being there. Khalis Wales, Family of Art Writers Forum, PWA, all of us have been doing sessions with multiple language poets coming in and reading Urdu, English, and whatnot. It's not that we are just living in a vacuum. I mean, Canadian Encyclopedia of Canadian Literature has a whole section on Urdu ghazal, and ghazal, it talks about the English writers who are writing Urdu ghazals in English. So we should know. And our biggest name, Goethe, wrote a divan. It is a whole divan of ghazal. So if we do not know what's going on, then it means that we ourselves are a little ignorant of what's happening around us. That's that. Now, in Canada, Phyllis Webb, Lorna Crosby, one of the top writers, from there to Shanice John Muhammad, she published a book of ghazals. So we are all doing, but unfortunately, you mentioned glass wall, your father was a universalist. There has been, and there is a glass ceiling in the Canadian publishing industry where the authors of the others cannot break into. However, recently, Nurjan Vasanji, who was running a magazine called the Toronto Literary Review, the Toronto South Asia Review, it's become a Windsor House. She has just been given an Order of Canada for promoting diversity and inclusivity, because what they did, they brought the authors of other languages and they helped publish them, because there is a close public. And I of course, I didn't meet you then, but I was at your event in the Eden Literary Festival, because the founder, Connie, was one of my mentors and my friend at Penn Canada. So I heard you there. So we are going all around as ourselves, like a Salik or a traveler, to find the truth. But there are challenges, and those challenges, Ontario Poetry Society has to themselves go out and seek people, now that you have heard today, because all of these people here have been contributing in this or that way.
Or maybe we can do some combined poetry sessions where we have poets from both English and Urdu circles. We can present both, and maybe translation. Really, that could be especially haiku, right? We can have haiku in Urdu and English and translations, and probably that could help us move forward as well. So thanks for that. And I would request Patrick to read some of your poems for us. It would be great to hear from you. Well, maybe 2, 3, whatever you like.
First of all, as I said, I am beyond, as a person, see how many people have come here. Your energy, whether you've spoken or not, but being here is fabulous, it's warm, it's inviting. And especially, it's very powerful what's happening here. To come and listen to our heart and all your voices and say, look, we want to get out into the mainstream. We want to people that hear our lovely poems, are fascinating, warm, thoughtful, mind-opening, heart-opening poetry that you write, because I've read the translations and I hear your voices. So I just wanted to speak to that and to your lovely energy to be here and support Faisal and all of your own community. My daughter, I mentioned earlier, was at Sick Kids, and she was there for a couple of years, and we got invited, Emma and myself, to go to this place that helped kids touched by cancer. So she was asked, and I was asked, to speak in downtown Toronto, 1,700 people, for a charity event for Cancer for Kids. I saw a spider. I run a bit, so I was out one morning, and I saw this little spider, or the thread, going from one bush to another about 2 or 3 feet away. It's cold, rainy, and windy. And I said, what's your life all about? Where are you off to, little spider? What are you up to? And so When I read this to 1,700 people, it's about overcoming fear and doubt and how do we go on in life, whatever your situation be. The spider, fragile ark caught in the vacant sky. I must move out from the home port, but to where? And what is this whisper that comes from within that whooshes its bellows again and again? What's out there? What's on the other side? And if I go, will they accept me? Will I fit in? Or if I'm caught in the morning rains and listen to that wind howl? Besides, I only have 7 legs. Still, I must go. Do I know to where I am going? Am I even halfway to a destination unknown? Maybe I should turn back. Again? No. Does it matter to where I am going? Does it matter how far I have gone? For I have decided not to stay in this web, and I have decided not to bury my head, for I am a spider. And a spider must spy, and I am a spider, and a spider must spin. Does it matter if I get blown away in that wind? No, for I am still a spider, and I will cast away again and again and again.
Very nice.
Father and daughter. It could be mom and daughter, mom and son, dad and son, and so on, right? It's real, it's life, it happens to all of us in one way or another. It happens to all of us one way or another. Father and daughter, the joy of rain splashes about her as she plays in the puddles at his feet. Sea mist wades into golden tresses. Warm hands tickle his little petite. She stands on stones and stares up at him as he lulls with the evening tide. No ogre could come to trample here. A lion sleeps by her side. Snowy blankets tucked away, robins trill the pine. A cupid claims papa's pearl. A teardrop's in the wine. Little voices scamper past, tiny shoes adorn the mantle. Midnight skies fade away on fairy wings and starry candles. Sky full of molten sun hides the tempest in the bay. From the depths a stranger howls. It's come to steal the wind away. Waves wander the rugged shoreline, grinding stone into sand. Again he strays into the night. Fog is crawling across the land. A shadow lingers on the bluff as the skin of the moon falls pale. Her cello cries out to his soul, foundering in the gale. Now lullaby visits soothe the strings as a storm of faces comes calling, like driftwood on the beach heaved out into the mauling. Moody cloud in the window creeping up along the coast. In her arms he softly sings as he sails away on the ship of ghosts. Thank you. Thank you, sir.